Welcome to our channel. We hope you enjoy today's video. Enjoy watching.
It was family day at the children's garden. My husband, Samuel, made up an excuse about work and said neither I nor our daughter, Lily, should see him. I couldn't stand it and decided to take Lily myself. As soon as we arrived, I saw Samuel holding a little boy in one arm and holding hands with his childhood friend, Raquel, with the other. They looked like a happy family of three, laughing and having a great time. When Samuel saw Lily and me, he slightly frowned and let go of Raquel's hand. I shot him a meaningful glance, then knelt down and took Lily's small hand, saying, "Say hello to Uncle." Raquel quickly took her son from Samuel's arms, looking embarrassed. "Quincy, please don't get angry," she said. Samuel was just being kind. This child has grown up without a father, and today is his 5th birthday. Samuel was just helping him feel like he had a dad for a day. I looked at her with a half smile. If that's the case, now that Lily and I are here, you shouldn't be holding on to Samuel. After all, we are the real family of 3. Raquel was surprised, but her son in her arms didn't accept it. "Dad, you promised to spend the day with Mom and me." The 5-year-old looked defiantly at me. I raised an eyebrow. Before I could say anything more, Samuel stepped in front of Raquel and the boy in a protective stance. His tone was impatient. "Quincy, you're also a mother, you have no empathy. Raquel and I grew up together. I'm just spending a day with them, just one day. You have to make a drama out of this?" I laughed bitterly. It was my fault for Raquel's misfortune. Just then, other parents began arriving with their children for family day and came over to greet us. "Good morning, Leo's mom and dad," they said. "Your family of 3 always comes together, unlike my husband, who's always saying he's busy with work and doesn't care about our child's growth." Raquel responded to the greeting awkwardly, while a flash of panic crossed Samuel's eyes. I couldn't help but confront him. "Samuel, this is what you call just one day?" Samuel got angry and embarrassed, grabbing my arm. "Quincy, there are a lot of people here, don't make a scene." He then looked at our daughter and lowered his voice. "It won't be good for Lily if this gets out. You know what I mean." Our daughter, hearing her name, suddenly looked around confused but didn't understand what was happening. She just clung tightly to my leg, her small hand sweating in mine. I felt her discomfort and knelt down to stroke her little ponytail, saying softly, "Don't be afraid, Mom is here." I watched as Samuel walked away with Raquel and Leo, soon surrounded by a group of people. Some smiled and greeted him, praising Samuel for his success in business, becoming the CEO of a multi-million-dollar company at just over 30. Samuel was arrogant and boastful, practically strutting. Raquel looked at Samuel with shining eyes, proud to be associated with him. Leo, still in Samuel's arms, suddenly turned to look at me and made a mocking face. I couldn't help but laugh coldly inside. It seemed Samuel had become quite full of himself. Although I had reduced my time at the company due to pregnancy and childbirth, 75% of the shares of the flying group were in my hands. I was the real leader, he just took advantage of me and, out of consideration for our marriage, I gave him the title of manager. I opened my phone and sent a message to HR, remove Samuel from the manager position and announce it internally next Monday. Then I sent a message to the legal department, "Luke, draft the divorce agreement between Samuel and me." "Oh, Samuel, if you want to live off me, first see if I allow it." Shortly after, the family day activities officially began. Each family sat at a prepared table. Lily looked at Samuel, who was sitting in the row in front of us, and asked disheartened, "Mom, why isn't Daddy sitting with us?" She asked disheartened, "Mom, why isn't Daddy sitting with us?" I stroked her chubby cheek, trying to reassure her. The teacher announced the start of the first activity, building with blocks, and mentioned there would be a Lego spaceship prize for the winner. Lily became excited and pointed at the spaceship, saying, "Mom, I want that. Let's do our best." Just as the time was running out, Lily raised her hand and exclaimed, "Teacher, we're done." The teacher approached to announce the winners when Leo, a boy from the front row, ran over and knocked down our blocks, claiming the first place for himself. Lily's eyes filled with tears as she furiously picked up a large wooden block and threw it at Leo. Samuel rushed over, scolding Lily, "How could you hit someone? Apologize to Leo right now." I firmly sided with my daughter, pointing out that Leo had started it by pushing our blocks. Samuel should have been protecting Lily, not scolding her. The situation escalated when Leo taunted Lily, saying, "Who's your daddy? Don't call him that, he's my dad." Lily was terrified and began sobbing, calling out for Samuel to say something. My heart ached as I looked at Samuel with anger, telling him not to leave us in this misunderstanding. Samuel, however, simply lifted Leo into his arms, further confusing the situation. As the other parents began murmuring and speculating about our family dynamics, Samuel remained silent, consoling Leo while Raquel stood by, trying to hide a smile. I hugged my crying daughter and stroked her back gently, though I wanted to confront Samuel and Raquel. Just then, someone complimented Samuel, saying he resembled a certain Mr. Brown, which made Samuel glance at me with a flash of guilt before nervously laughing it off. Meanwhile, Raquel looked radiant, and I realized too late the striking resemblance between Samuel and Leo. Eventually, I asked the teacher to take us to the rest area to calm Lily down. Once there, I comforted her until she fell asleep, her eyelids swollen from crying. My heart twisted in pain as I watched her. I slipped out quietly and walked to the end of the hallway to call HR and the legal department. "John, Luke, bring my marriage certificate with Samuel, the draft of the divorce agreement, and the termination letter from the Happy Baby nursery immediately. Hurry up." While I was discussing the details with them, I heard a scream. It was my daughter's voice. My heart sank instantly. At the end of the hallway near the bathroom door, Lily had been pushed to the ground and was sobbing. Leo was leading the attack against her with a fierce expression, saying, "This is for calling my dad your dad. Today, I'll beat you to death." He kicked Lily in the stomach. My heart stopped for a moment as I saw my little Lily on the ground. The fury I felt was like a volcano awakening inside me, but something deeper also awakened, a clarity of mind I had never experienced before. As I rushed toward my daughter, my mind was already calculating every future move like a game of chess where I could see all the plays with perfect clarity. John and Luke appeared right behind me with the documents in hand, silent witnesses to the scene unfolding. Samuel arrived seconds later and did nothing while his son, now I was sure Leo was his son, hurt our Lily. I lifted Lily from the ground with all the delicacy I could muster, feeling her small body tremble against mine. Her tears stained my cream-colored silk blouse, leaving dark spots that seemed to map the path of my revenge. Raquel appeared with that condescending smile I had grown to hate, trying to explain that children are like that. I looked at her fixedly, observing every detail of her face, memorizing every nervous gesture she made as she tried to control the situation. Her right hand constantly played with the pearl necklace, the same model Samuel had given me on our last anniversary. It was then that all the pieces fell into place, the late meetings, the sudden business trips, the secret calls. Like a detective finally finding crucial evidence, each detail took on a new meaning as I comforted Lily. My mind was already tracing a plan that would make both Samuel and Raquel pay for every tear my daughter had shed. I stood up with the dignity I could gather, holding Lily as if she were my shield and sword at the same time. With a voice that surprised even myself for its calmness, I addressed the present, "John, Luke, the documents, please." Samuel's face paled as he saw the company letterhead on the papers. His eyes, those same eyes that once made me sigh with love, now moved nervously between the documents and my face like a rat seeking escape from a trap. Raquel, interpreting her role as an innocent victim perfectly, took a step back, dragging Leo with her but staying close enough not to miss any detail of the drama about to unfold. The nursery teacher, Ms. Martinez, tried to mediate the situation with that sweet voice teachers used to calm a storm, but I was no longer the same woman who had entered the nursery that morning. Every second that passed, I felt my power, that which I had kept dormant in the name of love, awakening like a furious giant with a smile that would have made the bravest tremble. I extended the documents toward Samuel. "Dear Samuel," I said, my voice almost musical, as if I were telling a children's story, but each word was loaded with the venom of years of betrayal. "Why don't you explain to everyone who the real CEO of the flying group is, or would you rather I do it?" The murmurs around us ceased abruptly, as if someone had pressed the silence button in a movie. Samuel tried to approach me with that charming smile he had often used to get his way. "Quincy, darling, can we talk about this in private?" His words slithered like snakes, but this time their venom wouldn't affect me. Without moving a muscle, I pulled out my phone and played a recording of Samuel's and Raquel's voices in what was clearly an intimate conversation about their future plans and how they would use the company's money to build their real family. Raquel's face transformed into a mask of horror as she recognized the conversation. Her perfect makeup couldn't hide how all the blood drained from her face, leaving her as pale as the pearls around her neck, pearls I now knew were bought with my money. The other parents, who had moments before judged Lily and me, now watched the scene with a mix of fascination and horror. It was like being in the center of a theater where the script had suddenly changed, and the villains were being exposed one by one. With each passing second, I saw Samuel's castle of lies crumbling around him. Luke, my lawyer, began explaining the terms of the divorce agreement and the termination letter in a loud and clear voice. His words resonated in the hallway like hammer blows in a coffin: embezzlement of corporate funds, violation of fiduciary duties, improper conduct affecting the company's reputation. Each charge was a stab to Samuel's ego, and I savored every moment as if it were the finest wine. As all this happened, I felt Lily clinging tighter to me. Her small body had stopped trembling, and she now watched the scene with a mix of confusion and relief. Leo, on the other hand, began shouting, "You can't do this, he's my dad." His words were like lightning illuminating the darkness, causing several parents to gasp as they understood the true nature of the situation. Raquel tried to silence her son, but it was too late. The truth they had tried to hide was now exposed, shining like a beacon in the night. Samuel stood there paralyzed as his world crumbled piece by piece, his face showing a range of emotions I had never seen before: fear, shame, anger, and finally defeat. With a calmness I didn't know I possessed, I walked toward the exit but stopped in front of Raquel. I looked directly into her eyes, those eyes that had so often mocked me behind my back, and whispered loudly enough for everyone to hear, "The pearls suit you, dear. Consider them a farewell gift. After all, it's all you'll have left when I'm done with you." My voice sounded sweet, almost friendly, but each word was loaded with the weight of a promise. John, my HR manager, was already making calls, and I could see Samuel pale even more as he heard fragments of the conversation: freeze all accounts, block all access, change security codes. The following days were a whirlwind of calculated activity while Samuel and Raquel tried to maintain appearances. I moved my pieces with the precision of a surgeon, hiring the best team of private investigators in the city, led by a former federal agent named Rodrigo Mendoza. He had hawk-like eyes and a photographic memory that made every detail, no matter how small, stick. Just a week later, Rodrigo presented me with a thick dossier: suspicious bank transfers, secret meetings, and even an account in the Cayman Islands that Samuel had opened in Leo's name. Each page was another nail in the coffin of his reputation, and I read them all every night, planning my next move while Lily slept peacefully in the adjacent room. The annual shareholders' meeting was approaching, and with it, my golden opportunity. During those weeks, while Samuel continued to strut around the office as if nothing had changed, I wove an invisible web around him. Every time I saw him in the company hallways with his Italian suit and toothpaste commercial smile, I returned the smile with the same falseness he had shown me for years. "Good morning, dear," I would say with a sugary tone that made his eyes narrow with suspicion. He didn't know that each "good morning" was a reminder of the time he had left before his downfall. Meanwhile, Raquel had begun appearing casually at corporate events, always with Leo by her side, as if marking her territory. If only she knew that each appearance was more evidence for my case. The day of the annual meeting arrived with the inevitability of dawn. I dressed in a bespoke black suit that I had made especially for the occasion, elegant, but with an intimidating air that made me feel like a modern-day Mata Hari. Lily stayed with my mother, who, after hearing the whole story, hugged me and said, "Make them pay, my love." The boardroom on the top floor was a modern amphitheater with glass walls, offering a panoramic view of the city. The shareholders arrived one by one, and I could see Samuel greeting them with the blind confidence of someone who believed they had the world in their hands. Raquel was also there, sitting in the back row like a VIP spectator of her own destruction, wearing a red dress that made her stand out like a bloodstain on a white carpet. When it was my turn to speak, the silence in the room was so thick it could be cut with a knife. I stood up with the grace of a ballerina and the determination of a soldier. The giant screens behind me came alive, displaying graphs, documents, and photographs I had collected over months. Esteemed shareholders, I began with a clear and firm voice. Today we will not just review numbers, today we will talk about betrayal, theft, and how Mr. Samuel Brown has been using our resources to fund his parallel life. The murmurs started like a distant hum and turned into a roar as the evidence began to unfold on the screens: bank statements, compromising emails, dated photographs showing years of deception. I watched as Samuel's face turned from red to white in seconds, while Raquel sank into her seat as if she wanted to disappear. The final blow came when I projected the DNA proof confirming Samuel's paternity of Leo, along with records of all the transfers he had made to a secret account for Raquel over the years. As you can see, I continued with a smile that would have made any soap opera villain proud. While Mr. Brown played happy family with his mistress, he was systematically draining our company. The shareholders were furious, some shouted, others demanded explanations, but Samuel could only stutter incoherently. Raquel tried to escape the room, but my security guards strategically blocked all exits. The moment I had been waiting for had finally arrived. Therefore, I proposed an immediate vote to remove Samuel Brown from all his positions in the flying group and initiate legal actions for embezzlement. The vote was unanimous in a matter of minutes. Samuel went from being a respected CEO to an exposed corporate criminal, escorted out of the building by security guards along with a hysterical Raquel, who kept shouting that it was all a misunderstanding. I remained in my place, savoring every second. The journalists who had been invited to the meeting captured every moment, and by dinner time, the fall of the great Samuel Brown was the top news on all channels. That night, as I put Lily to bed, she asked why I was smiling so much. I stroked her hair and said, "Because Mom is a superhero, remember? And superheroes always win." Months later, the flying group had doubled its value under my exclusive leadership, while Samuel and Raquel faced criminal charges. The last I heard of them, they were living in a small apartment on the outskirts of the city, surviving on what little they had left after being forced by the courts to return everything they had stolen. Life takes many turns, and sometimes those turns lead us exactly where we need to be. Today, 3 years later, Lily is a happy child who barely remembers that terrible morning at the nursery. I, on the other hand, will never forget the lesson I learned. The best revenge is not just destroying your enemies, but prospering so much that their existence becomes irrelevant. Samuel occasionally tries to contact us, especially when he needs money, but his messages go unanswered. The last time I saw him was at the local supermarket where he works as a cashier. Our eyes met for a moment, and I could see in his eyes the recognition of all he had lost. Lily, who was walking beside me, didn't even recognize him. She just kept talking about her day at school while I paid for our groceries with the corporate card of the flying group. Sometimes, the best part of revenge is living well.